A couple of years ago, I took down these old deck stairs as part of a patio project. I'm guessing they were probably 15 years old. The treads themselves were showing their age, but the structure had way too much wobble. Two stringers was not enough for this set of stairs. I didn't keep the stringers, but I did hang on to the 2x12 cedar treads. Right away, I cut off the ends that were rotting, and to make sure I was clear of any leftover nails. I gave them a quick pass through my planer to be sure they were worth keeping, and then they landed in a stack on my garage floor for 2 years. First off, let's take a quick look at the drawing I put together of what I'm going for here. Pretty simple side table design, 4 legs, a top, some diagonal bracing for structure and looks. I'll throw a few dimensions on here to show the size of this thing. I didn't follow the plans exactly, but used it as a general guide as I was building. I had to make a few adjustments along the way to work with the material sizes I had. I really didn't want to buy any new lumber. We ended up about 6 feet long, a little over 3 feet tall, and about 15 inches wide. Plan most of my material come out a little over an inch thick, and we'll go with some 5-inch wide deck board looking pieces for a top. A few extra dimensions, so I've got an idea what I'm cutting for as I put this together, and then it'll be time to get to the garage. I didn't take a lot of extra time to film this. This project had been uncompleted for long enough. First, I cut everything down to rough size, jointed and planed it flat and square. Most of the main parts here ended up roughly 1 1/8 thick and 3 inches wide. After cutting to length, I took a few passes with the block plane just to take off the sharp corners. I go ahead and ease all the ends for the joints too. I find that it accents the joints pretty nicely and more importantly hides any very minor alignment errors. I didn't have anything long enough for the long stretchers, and I didn't really want to wait for glue to dry at this point. So I went with a few pocket holes to make a long board out of 2 shorter ones. They end up underneath anyway, and also were hidden by some reinforcement blocks. For attaching to the legs, I did go with dowels. I've had a Jessom dowel jig for a long time, and I really like it. I do wish that I could adjust the center gauge by 1/16 instead of only 1/8, but a shim can make up for that easily enough. I had put the legs together a few weeks ago. I laminated 2 pieces together to make legs that ended up a little under 2 1/4 inches thick and 3 inches wide, and used the same dowel assembly for the short stretchers between them. Started milling up some more pieces to make the lower stretcher and diagonal parts. I went ahead and milled up the parts for the top as well. These ended up about the same thickness as everything else, but I ripped them to 5 inches wide. With the legs and top stretchers dry assembled, I could get some real measurements for the bottom parts. For the bottom stretcher that would be more visible, I joined 2 halves with some dowels and bolted on some 3D printed brackets. These brackets are as much about looks as they were about structure. This long stretcher then attaches with some dowels to the leg assemblies. After everything was dry fit, it was time to glue it up. A little bit of glue in each dowel hole before shoving it all together is all it takes. Note, make sure you have enough clamps ready before you put glue on everything. I had to scramble to assemble a few of my parallel clamp extension bars before the glue started drying. After that was all sorted, I could measure and cut some cross members to support the top. The top was going to be in planks, sort of like deck boards, so I made sure to align the cross members where the top planks would meet. I tinkered here a bit to get the right layout for the angled parts, to make sure they landed on the top skirt and in the right place on the bottom stretcher, and also matched the angle of the brackets I'd already printed. I really like how these brackets and bolts came out. They add a bit of an outdoor or industrial look that matches the imperfect cedar well, and they're plenty strong enough to hold this simple table together. I lined up the top planks starting in the middle and used a few brad nails from the bottom just to hold things in place. After that, I attached everything with some screws. I probably should have drilled pocket holes in the skirt boards to attach everything, but I didn't and just toenailed in some screws where I could. The next morning I had some helpers that were pretty eager to help me stain this thing. I gave the top a quick pass with the sander and let them get to work. I used some ready sealed deck stain I had left over. They market this stuff as goof proof, and if these two couldn't mess it up, then I think they're right. It's an oil that soaks in instead of sits on top, so there's no brush marks or anything like that. You just spread it out and wipe up any that stays pooled. To keep the feet from wicking up water from the patio, I quickly modeled up some simple standoffs to 3D print. I made these just a little undersized from the legs and cut out some chamfered holes for some small screws. We'll round the corners off while we're at it, because why not? Then I sliced them up for 3D printing and made sure I used enough top and bottom layers to make them solid. They're only 3mm thick. A couple hours on the printer and a few screws later, we were done. And there you go. This looks so much better than it did on a pile on my floor, and it'll do a much better job of holding up a beverage or two. I'll link to the SketchUp drawing and the 3D printed parts in the description below in case they're useful to you. Until next time, go make something.